Okay, anyway, it's New York. Yes, the delirious devotees. We chanted the prayers? Yes. Huh? Three what? Okay, let's start again. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pastya Chadeshatarne Sri Krishna Chaitanya Pramanityananda Sri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindhubhya evacha. Patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. New York City, July the 19th, 1971. After Detroit, Prabhupada visited Boston and then flew to New York, where another large group of devotees had gathered. The New York Daily News covered his airport arrival with photos and an article. Swami, how they love you. Bhavananda, the New York Temple president, had decorated the temple room of the Brooklyn Center with bright colors. Prabhupada's Vyasasan was a special creation of plaids, stripes, and checks in fuchsia, lime, black, white, and red. How does that sound? Interesting combination. Anyway, Prabhupada liked it very much. 200 devotees, many having waited for more than a year to be initiated, converged on the Brooklyn Temple. This is a new temple in Brooklyn, across the river from Manhattan. Yeah, interesting. Right, okay. And Prabhupada held initiations for 5 consecutive days, initiating around 24 disciples each day. One after another, the young men and women would approach Prabhupada on his multicolored Vyasasan to receive their initiation beads and spiritual names. Those receiving the Brahmin initiation went one by one to see Prabhupada in his room and receive the Gayatri Mantra. That's what happened to me. I went on my own to see Prabhupada and receive Gayatri. That was a very sobering experience. Madhu Mangal. I went to Prabhupada's room and offered obeisances. Come here, he said. So I went and sat close to him. He began teaching me the Gayatri Mantra, and I was looking up at him. The sun was right behind his head. He looked like a mountain, like the Himalayas, and I was like a mole, a stone. He was very big, and I seemed very insignificant. Riktananda. Prabhupada turned to face me, and his eyes seemed like limitless pools of an entrancing liquid. I knew he was focused always on Krishna, and his eyes were a reflection of that happiness. He said something to me, and I said, "No, sir." Saying sir to him seemed natural, and he seemed to be happy that I had said it. Then in a very clear, soft, steady voice, he began to teach me the Gayatri Mantra. Then he took the sacred thread and put it around my neck and across my shoulder, very gracefully and with such precision in his movements. Now, he said, you are a Brahmin. Daivi Shakti. Prabhupada had the Gayatri Mantra written on a small piece of paper, and as he was teaching it to me, he had his eyes closed. I would repeat it word for word after him. When he got to the third line, however, instead of saying Gurudevaya, he said the word from the fifth line. I didn't know whether to follow what he had said or just say what was on the paper. So I said what was on the paper. And then Prabhupada immediately realized what he had done and changed it. But I suddenly realized that the perfect chanting of mantras was not so significant. Prabhupada was fully absorbed in thinking of Krishna, and although there may have been some apparent flaw in his pronunciation, he was perfect regardless. I saw that the real perfection of devotional service was to follow Prabhupada. After I received my Gayatri Mantra, I asked Prabhupada if I could ask him some questions, and he said yes. Srila Prabhupada said, I haven't been able to serve you in rapt attention. What can I do to serve you? I was praying he would give me a special service to do for him personally. Chant Hare Krishna was all he said. That's a pretty powerful instruction. That's sure quite an instruction. Is there anything more? I asked. He said, are you married? I said, yes. So he said, serve your husband. I said, my husband and I don't get along. So he said, be a pujari. There are so many things. His answer seemed to solve all my difficulty. First and foremost was to chant Hare Krishna. And in addition to that, there are so many other services. If you don't do one of them, then go on to the next one. There are so many things. When he said those words, it relieved all my anxiety. When Prabhupada gave me Gayatri, the only instruction, he instructed me and showed me how to chant Gayatri and how to count. But the actual, instruction other than the mantras and the counting on your fingers and that, the only instruction he gave me was to chant Gayatri in the morning, in the middle of the day, and in the evening. So that's very sacred for me. Right. In New York, Prabhupada lectured gravely and authoritatively from Srimad Bhagavatam, stressing surrender to Krishna through surrendering to the Krishna consciousness movement. Unlike any other Bhagavatam lecturer, Prabhupada was able to offer a movement, a society, and a way of life that were fully Krishna conscious, and that gave any interested person practical entrance into the devotional service of the Lord. That's a really important point. We've got a whole, there are different terms that can be used. Society, community, movement, organization, all these things are appropriate. So he's given us, it's really like he's given us a whole world. And people following at least, like other Gaudiya Vaishnav teachers. They don't have that. They really don't have that. And and it gives so much support, encouragement, and strength to have the whole community, the whole society, whatever term you might use, or this massive family. It's such a helpful thing. Someone asked how a person who had been very sinful could be relieved of his karma, and Prabhupada replied simply, "Come and live with us, that's all. Is it very difficult? Our students, they're living with us. You simply come and live with us, and you are free from all karma. Is it difficult? Then do that. We shall give you food. We shall give you shelter. We shall give you nice philosophy. If you want to marry, we shall give you a good wife. What do you want more? So come and live with us. That's all." Prabhupada stressed the same point in his lectures. If a person seeking spiritual fulfillment lived and served with the ISKCON devotees, even material fulfillment would come. He said, these Krishna-conscious boys and girls in 60 centers, they're living in the best houses, they're eating the best food, they're in the best consciousness, they've got the best hope, everything best, their feature of body is best. What material happiness do you want more than this? They've got wife, children, happiness, home, everything full. So material happiness is nothing to a Krishna-conscious person. Material happiness will roll at his feet saying, "Please take me, please take me." There's no need of asking for it. Simply be steady and ask Krishna, "Please engage me in your service." Then your satisfaction will automatically come. Don't bother for material happiness. Unquote. Nandakishore asked, what happens to a person out on the street if we just give him one simply wonderful or some prasadam? Prabhupada, then it is wonderful, simply wonderful. The devotees laughed. He has not tasted such wonderful sweet in his life. Therefore you give him wonderful, and because he's eating that wonderful sweet, one day he will come to your temple and become wonderful. Therefore it is simply wonderful. So go on distributing this simply wonderful. Your philosophy is simply wonderful. Your prasadam is simply wonderful. You are simply wonderful. And your Krishna is simply wonderful. The whole process is simply wonderful. Krishna acts wonderfully, and it is acting wonderfully. Who can deny it? Kirtanananda Maharaj, Prabhupada is simply wonderful. While Prabhupada continued in New York, poised to leave for London in a few days, his secretary mentioned that many American centers were still vying for his presence. Prabhupada casually remarked that if any center could arrange a good lecture program and pay his travel expenses plus $1,000, then he would go there before leaving for London. Hearing this, the devotees in Gainesville, Florida, determined to meet Prabhupada's transcendental challenge. The temple president, Hridayananda, assigned an uninitiated devotee, David Lieberman, to find a sponsor at the University of Florida willing to pay $1,000 for Prabhupada to come and speak. David visited every student organization on campus until he found a donor. Prabhupada agreed to come, even though his secretary informed him that the flight would lay over 2 hours in Atlanta and then continue to Jacksonville, a 1.5-hour car ride from Gainesville. Atlanta, July 29th, 1971. The 10 residents of the recently opened Atlanta temple arranged to receive Prabhupada during his layover at the Atlanta airport. They prepared a large feast and decorated the Eastern Airlines VIP lounge with fruits, flowers, and garlands. Bill Ogle. Who was Bill Ogle? And I forget Bill Ogle. Balavanta. So Bill Ogle, although Srila Prabhupada was not big physically, he immediately captured the consciousness of the entire Atlanta airport when he entered. Everyone was watching as he walked with his head held high, his cane moving gracefully with every step. The airport is one of the busiest in the country, but everyone who saw Prabhupada looked at him in amazement. Airport officials voluntarily began clearing a path for Prabhupada to walk. But what was even more amazing was that he was so submissive to such insignificant disciples as we, unquote. Prabhupada entered the VIP lounge with his disciples and about 20 Indian guests, confronting the portable Vyasasan atop a marble table. Prabhupada declined. The seat seemed unsteady, but the devotees assured him that it was sturdy, so Prabhupada climbed up, sat down, and began leading a kirtan. After speaking for about 15 minutes, Prabhupada concluded his lecture. Quote, "This is not sentimental chanting, but it is based on the soundest philosophy, Vedic literatures. We've got so many books, and you can buy them in our bookstore. Where is the bookstore?" There was a long pause. The devotees had remembered fruits, flowers, the chair, the feast, invitations to the Indians, but they'd forgotten Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada continued to wait for an answer to his question until finally the senior disciple, Janamejaya, replied, "Prabhupada, we usually have a bookstore." That's an answer, isn't it? Was all Prabhupada said. Again a long silence. "So," Prabhupada said, looking to the audience, "any questions?" Prabhupada chatted with the Indians, asking their names and where they were from in India. Most of them were young men with families and treated him respectfully, like a grandfather or a revered Swami. One Indian man, about 35, mentioned that he was getting his PhD in biology. "Oh, biology," Prabhupada said. Poor frogs." Everyone in the lounge except the biologist burst into laughter. No, the biologist protested, embarrassed. "Why poor frogs?" "Because you are killing," Prabhupada said. "But it is for the advancement of knowledge," said the biologist. "So it is worthwhile. It is for the advancement of knowledge." "All right," said Prabhupada. "If I ask you now, will you give your body for the advancement of knowledge?" Everyone in the room began to laugh. Yes, I would," the man replied. But the more he protested, repeating, "Yes, I would," the more ridiculous he seemed, and the harder everyone laughed. "How many species of life are there?" Prabhupada asked. 50 million, the biologist replied. "Oh," said Prabhupada, "you've seen them all?" "No." "How many have you seen?" "Perhaps 5,000. "And you are wrong," Prabhupada said. "There are 8,400,000 species of life. We have scientific knowledge from the Vedas." Bill Ogle. After Prabhupada took prasad, we performed a play for him. The play was The Brahmin and the Cobbler. I played Vishnu. It was terrible. I had to be Vishnu, and my wife had to be Lakshmi. I was lying down as Lord Vishnu, and my wife was massaging my feet. Prabhupada kept looking at me, and I thought he must be thinking, "Who is this rascal playing Vishnu?" My feeling was, this is not very good. I shouldn't be doing this. I was very embarrassed to be in front of Prabhupada like that. Jayasena was Narada Muni, and he offered obeisances about 100 times throughout the play. Because Prabhupada was there, Jayasena was constantly offering obeisances to everyone and anything. So although he was playing Narada Muni, he offered obeisances to the cobbler. But some of the Indians spoke up. They were a little taken aback that Narada Muni, such a great saint, was offering obeisances to a cobbler who is ordinarily a very low-class person. So at this point, Prabhupada interrupted and began to explain. Actually, he said, it is all right that Narada Muni has offered obeisances to the cobbler because the cobbler is a Vaishnav. Any Vaishnav can receive obeisances, more than a Brahmin. He continued narrating the play. He told the story, and we continued acting. It was ecstatic. As Prabhupada, unquote, as Prabhupada was leaving the lounge to board his flight for Jacksonville, a lady in a wheelchair, the mother of one of the devotees in Atlanta, raised herself up and threw herself at Prabhupada's feet. With tears in her eyes, she cried out, "I am dying of cancer. Save me, save me." Prabhupada bent down and put his hand on her head. "That is all right," he said comfortingly. "That is all right." As Prabhupada, garlanded with red roses and magnolias, walked down the corridor toward his plane, the devotees thought that Prabhupada appeared majestic like a king. He emanated a golden effulgence, and he seemed powerful, yet humble. The devotees felt spiritual strength and pledged to follow Prabhupada's teachings. They last glimpsed him walking across the airfield toward the small plane that would take him to Jacksonville. His saffron silk dhoti and kurta blowing in the breeze, he turned to them and waved. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Oh, any comment or question? Oh, yes.
Can I ask a question that is not pertaining to today's Friday?
Okay, ek second. Okay, yeah.
We have not only ISKCON, outside of ISKCON and inside, but all over. We have conflicts, we have miscommunications.
Yeah.
And through these conflicts and miscommunications, bad relationships happen.
Right.
So is it because we don't love ourselves and we are not able to show love to others? Or is it because we are not able to love Krishna?
I'd say it's more because we don't love Krishna enough and we don't appreciate the devotees enough. If we get upset with them, or, if they get upset with us, well, then it depends, but then it may be true for them.
So Gurudev, what about loving ourselves?
Yeah, see, well, okay, so if you love, we understand if we love someone else, we'll serve them.
Yes.
And at least we'll serve them. Like we love Krishna and we glorify Krishna too. So when you say love yourself, what would be the manifest form of it?
Is to accept who I am, or who.
Yeah, well, you are who you are. That shouldn't be a big challenge. Unless you've got sort of hallucinations about, delusions of grandeur. But, I can understand in the sense that you would serve your needs and your interests in Krishna consciousness by really being Krishna conscious. But you wouldn't glorify yourself, although that's part of love, really, expressing appreciation of the person or persons who you really have affection for. So I'd say it's sort of a different type of thing, really. Love yourself. We have to really look after ourselves in Krishna consciousness. See how Krishna consciousness is facilitated. That we have to do. It's a little different from the general idea of loving a person. Sort of a different thing. At least according to my understanding, which may not. It's not something I've really gone into deeply, but I thought a little bit about it, is that I know in modern psychology and sort of related fields, there's an idea that you got to love yourself. It's not uncommon in such circles. I've heard people talk about it. But, what do they mean? Are they saying that you shouldn't hate yourself? Is that what they're saying?
Will it be like more accept oneself for who they are?
Maybe. See, like I said, I don't know exactly. It's not something I've really been into in depth. But an idea that came to me sometime before was that people are prone to hate themselves or not really like themselves, like material humility. But it's very material. And it's not very nice. Yeah. Whereas humility in Krishna consciousness, to think that I'm just a stupid fool, that's not hating yourself. In a sense, it's more accepting yourself, because generally we are. But if one is Krishna conscious and one thinks that I am a fool, it will lead to inspiration in Krishna consciousness. It won't lead to depression or some like hating oneself or feeling, like that. So, I mean, when you say accept oneself, depends what one means by that. Yeah, I mean, it's true, we have to accept that I'm an imperfect person, and we have to learn that I have this shortcoming and that shortcoming. That we have to learn and accept, and not. We should really try to avoid delusions of grandeur. Really. Ideas that I am something higher than what I am. Because what we are, we're devotees. We have to accept we're devotees and not daydream about being other types of people, like non-devotees. So I would say, in that sense, definitely in that sense, which has similarities to the materialists, but it's also quite different. I mean, there's significant differences, put it that way, between that and how materialistic people would conceive of accepting oneself or loving oneself. We have to be careful with materialistic psychologists. 'Cause, they'll have some good ideas. Of course they will. But they'll also have some bad ideas. Whew. Oh, yeah. Okay? Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.